a low-maintenance, pollinator-friendly planter at home and enjoys fresh veggies from his father's garden each summer. Ting has gained experience designing many rain gardens through his work with Rain Gardens United. Tonight, he is excited to share with us why he finds rain gardens so appealing and how to design, construct, and maintain one. Please join me in welcoming Ting Wang of Rain Gardens United.
Thank you, Leslie, for the introduction. I don't think I've been in a Zoom meeting this large before with more than 60 people, so it's a little bit intimidating, but we'll see what I can do with this. Okay, so I think I can share screen, and this one. Okay, so you should all be able to see the full screen presentation at this point. Let me know if there is any issues, and also if I should just slow down or talk faster. But yeah, let's just jump right in. So there's a very brief table of contents. It ended up being a longer presentation than I expected, so I probably could have broken this down a bit more. But essentially, I'll talk about Rain Gardens United at first. And then a bit about Rain Gardens itself. And then we'll get into some details about how to design a rain garden, right? What kind of things you should focus on, and then how to actually construct it. Essentially dig it out and then how to fill it back in so that it's a rain garden. You can see an image of essentially the first rain garden that Rain Gardens United built. If you walk around town, you might be able to see the small brown sign at the bottom. But essentially, this is Mark's rain garden, Mark Yamaguchi. And he's really the founder of Rain Gardens. And he brought me on fairly early on to do essentially design work, right? So by now, we've really worked on this nonprofit alongside this idea of just building rain gardens for people. So I hope to talk about that today. Here's a little bit of a background from me. Essentially, I studied math, physics, and teaching, so it's not very directly connected to gardening and botany and horticulture, but you know, I've always found it very interesting. I think one thing I remember hearing is that as a Chinese person, every family typically has a small garden. It's just it's a very common part of the culture. I started with this by volunteering for the Homegrown National Park project, and this was put on by David Suzuki Foundation. This project has by now turned into the Butterfly Way project, and the low maintenance native planter that I have in the front of the house is part of the Butterfly Way project as well. So I started helping Mark with his rain garden project in 2015. And since then, we've really just been sort of chipping at it, right? I wasn't really working on it full time back then, but now I am spending considerable amounts of time on a daily basis on rain gardens. Right, so here is actually what Mark's rain garden looks like now. He did a lot of updates earlier this summer. Let me actually go back a few slides so you can see what it was like before. I feel like this picture was in year 3. Yeah, I feel like this is fairly late in the summer in year 3. And you can see that it's very full of plants. And essentially what he's done is convert the lawn into a just mulch cover with some walking stones. And before he didn't really have a paved driveway. He still doesn't now, it's gravel, but he was able to sort of make it look a bit more uniform, right? Okay, so here's a very brief background of Rain Gardens United. We're gonna go into each of these sections individually, so I don't think I need to spend much time onto this slide. Essentially, we started as a small citizen intervention with David Suzuki Foundation's Homegrown National Park. And what he wanted to do was naturalize his yard and also use it at the same time to manage the rainwater that lands on his roof. We're going to get some closer pictures of Mark's rain garden, and you can see essentially the downspout is just directed into that garden, right? And we put in some features to absorb that rainwater that comes down when it rains, when there is a storm. On this page, there's a couple more pictures. If you've seen the Canoe Gardens around the city, that was started with the Homegrown National Park project. That wasn't us, but we definitely helped out putting down a couple of these canoe gardens. They also used to do a park crawl every year. And we kind of took the inspiration on that and turned it into a rain garden crawl in the East End. So typically every year we run a rain garden crawl in the East End to sort of showcase our rain gardens. Okay, so after about a year of that, actually no, within the first year, part of Mark's intervention wasn't just to build a rain garden for himself, but to organize 10 of his neighbors to build a cluster of rain gardens that are within a short walking distance from them. If you look at the map on the top right, essentially at the center with all of those brown dots, right? There's a very dense cluster of brown pins in the center of the map. And those are essentially the 10 neighbors that also have rain gardens. So in the first year, we started with 11 rain gardens. Now that was with funding from the Toronto Foundation. I think we gave him about $10,000. So he was able to discount each of those rain gardens by $1,000. Which actually helps a lot. We find that that is one of the most effective ways of convincing people to get rain gardens. If there is some other organization or the city willing to provide financial incentives for it. Here's another picture of one of those 10 rain gardens from the first year. This is Steve's rain garden. And you can see that before it was this boulevard with the two downspouts, right? Both emptying into the boulevard. So this is already pretty good, right? There's sort of like a ranking of what's good and bad in terms of what's happening to your downspout. And we'll actually get into that, so I won't spend too much time right now. But beside on the right side, you can see what this looks like now, right? They still have those same two downspouts coming down into that area, but instead of just a lawn, it's filled with native plants. You can see very prominently in the front, we have all kinds of common milkweed, right, to support the butterfly population. I think this garden, the yellow flowers are sneezeweed. And there's all kinds of other stuff in here as well. I think I see some dense blazing stars further back from the sneezeweed. Yeah, so this is one of the really successful rain gardens that we're able to build. After that initial 10, essentially we just try to repeat what we were doing, right? And sort of try to perfect the process and be able to do it more efficiently. So mostly it's just finding homeowners who are interested in rain gardens, and we're able to provide the following services, right? We can do a consultation. We can go to their house and measure the roof, for example, measure the size of the yard, see if the condition is suitable for a rain garden. We also learned how to do concept designs. I've been using SketchUp, which does have a free version, and you can do a sketch, like a 3D model of the house and of the yard, and sort of just get a rough shape of the garden in. And this is, we also did a lot of collaboration with contractors to build rain gardens for people who are interested. If you look at the picture, I think we do get another close-up of this, but the picture on the right side in the middle is Mark's rain garden. So that's when we were building it. And that's me further in the back with a hat. And the other two are also volunteers from David Suzuki Foundation. Okay. So at this point, Rain Gardens United wasn't just a project done by a couple of locals. We decided to incorporate as a federal nonprofit called Rain Gardens United. So for that, we commissioned a logo and came up with a set of bylaws. It was pretty interesting. We were able to ask Dentons to help us put together the bylaws. So that allowed us to save a lot of time and energy and headaches. This is 3 more pictures of Mark's rain garden. You can actually get we'll get another close-up, but you can see the downspout coming down on the right side of these pictures, and it's just pointed right into the rain garden. I think the picture on the left side is in the 1st year, the middle is in the 3rd year, and then the right side is the 5th year. And I think this rain garden is 5 years old at this point, and it's still working quite well. Okay, so on this slide is our mission statement. So Rain Gardens United's mission is to educate on, to advocate for, and to facilitate the building of rain gardens in and around Toronto. And these are some of our activities, right? Things that we end up doing, which is essentially attend public events to spread the word, or these kind of events where there is like an invited speaker or a symposium where we have to send in an application for. We try and do some advocacy as well. I feel like this is probably our weakest part right now to sort of advocate for better support of rain gardens from the city. Essentially, we're just not very experienced with reaching out to the city, right, and sort of being able to convince them to do something like this. I also feel like there is some resistance from the city in uptaking these kind of solutions, because there was a discussion with John Tory back in 2017 to sort of create a stormwater charge, right? A separate stormwater management fee. And what that fee would have done is, if you have a really large parking lot, you would have to pay a bit more to Toronto Water because there's all kinds of wastewater coming off of the parking lot. And usually that water goes into storm drain and into the lake. So it's a little bit more taxing on the system to have a large lot or a large roof. Therefore, a stormwater fee would allow the city to have funding to sort of tackle those kind of issues. In terms of facilitation, oh, by the way, the 2017 proposal, I think a lot of money was spent on like public consultations. And then at the end, Tory just said, people don't want it, we're not going to do it. So it's been shelved since then. I think it'll be really great if we are able to advocate to the city that this is a good idea and it's being done in the following other cities. In terms of facilitation, most of this is just measurements and doing designs, and then coordinating with a contractor to actually build the rain garden. Facilitation, I think, is where we make most of our money. We get some amount of funding from the government. We're trying to do better, get better at fundraising. And we get a small percentage of any rain garden construction that we help essentially arrange, right? So if we put together a homeowner with a contractor experience in rain garden construction, we get a headhunter fee, right? A small percentage. Okay, so this is some of the things that we want to do more of. Essentially, we want to do more outreach events and fundraising. This presentation will be part of that. We're also planning an event early October. And I think this is the first time we've actually put together an event ourselves. So we're pretty excited about that, and I'll talk about it near the end of the talk. We want to put together more ready-to-use resources. So some of these resources would be essentially what you're going to see later on in this presentation. We want more partnerships with community and ICI. So this involves community groups like church groups, for example. ICI is industrial, commercial, and institutional, right? So this will be planting rain gardens on school grounds or next to a factory or next to a large parking lot. So far, most of our rain gardens have been in front yards or backyards. We do want to provide training and workshops somewhere down the line. I feel like it's just going to take a lot more preparation to get those up and running. And we want to do more residential retrofits, because one of the issue we find with with stormwater management in the city is the focus is usually on public land, right? These are initiatives by the city and they have the most control over public land, so they're most comfortable working on public land, which means that you're leaving large swaths of the area of Toronto sort of they don't really look at it, right? So we find that that is a good opportunity for us to focus more on residential retrofits. Right, I put in some zoomed in images of those two pictures that I had from the previous slide. This is Tyson and Carolyn's rain garden. I think their intention actually is to get rid of the lawn eventually. So they haven't really maintained the lawn and the rain garden's boundary isn't nearly as square by now. I think important features that I can point out is you can see the downspout in the background. It's coming down from the roof, going into a channel made by river rock, sort of bringing it to the center of the rain garden. I don't think I'd be able to identify the plants that are in here. And the other few things, like if you know about rain gardens, you might say there is a couple of issues here, but we'll try and get into that later. Essentially, it doesn't look like it's a bowl shaped, right? Rain gardens are typically supposed to be very bowl shaped. And this is another one on Woodbine. This rain garden requests that they prefer the rock look. So we actually left most of the rain garden covered with river rock. In fact, I think in this one, we just planted in that strip in the middle. And I think the milkweed growing along the edge just sort of showed up there by itself. I don't think we put that milkweed there. All right, one other resource I want to show everyone is the Greening Your Grounds Guide. So this is something put together by, the TRCA, actually by a couple of different conservation authorities, and it's full of ways of managing stormwater sort of as a homeowner, right? A homeowner's guide, yeah, you can see it in the slide, a homeowner's guide to stormwater landscaping projects. And one of these projects is rain garden. It also has several other things like permeable pavement, rain barrels, downspout disconnect. All of these are able to work together. So if you are interested in dealing with stormwater in your front yard, this is an excellent guide to pick up. They also run essentially 1 or 2 workshops every year. And if you do the workshop through TRCA or some other group, you can get a free copy of this guide. We usually give them out at farmers markets and at environment days as well. So if you find us in one of those, we might have a copy of this sitting around. Essentially, rain gardens are able to absorb excess stormwater during rainstorms. It does a lot of filtration, and we'll see later why that's important, right? A lot of these pollutants, if it's from rainwater, it just ends up directly into the lakes and rivers. There isn't a processing or any way of filtering it. So a way of filtering that pollution before you even get into the stormwater system is very valuable. It's able to increase the amount of water that soaks into the ground and increase the local groundwater supply. This isn't really as big of an issue in Toronto. I'm pretty sure all of our drinking water comes from the lake, so we don't really have to care too much about groundwater. But in other places of the world or further north from Toronto, that could be very useful. One of the very exciting things is that it does provide a habitat, right? There's a lot of food sources in the native plants that we put into the rain garden. So it provides a habitat for wildlife like birds, butterflies, and beneficial insects. And it's a beautiful, unique garden that will make you the envy of the block. I think I actually just copied this from the Greening Your Grounds guide. So it's sort of their wording, but I don't think there is other benefits that I can add into here right now. Yeah, essentially this is a list of benefits from rain gardens. In terms of managing stormwater, from my background of math and physics, this is the part that I'm personally more interested in. but there is, very large aspects that have other interests. Essentially, urbanization disrupts the natural flow of water through the environment. And you've all seen pictures of the water cycle, and there's some infiltration, there's some runoff, and there's some evaporation. There's definitely other things that are happening. But one thing that happens once you have a lot of development is you're changing that balance of what's happening to the water after it lands on the ground. And the issue with urban runoff, right, if you're downtown Toronto, is that the stormwater runoff it's hot, right, it's fast, and it's dirty. So hot, it's a bit of an issue once it gets down to the lake. It could change the temperature of the lake by a fraction of a degree, which could have an impact on some of the biological features in the lake. Fast is more just an issue of erosion, right? It ends up causing some amount of damage. And dirty is just more pollution when it gets down to the lake, or even just along the street. That can definitely happen as well. One thing that you might not be aware of is Toronto, a large part of Toronto, about 23% of the city of Toronto is using a combined sewer system. We're going to have 3 of these slides, right? Case 1, case 2, and case 3. Case 1 is a combined system, and you can see that the water that lands on the roof in a combined system, it'll go through the downspout. It's directly connected to the sewers, to a combined sewer. And if you look at the right side of this picture, the water that lands on the street would also go into a combined sewer. So this is the situation that causes what's called a combined sewer overflow. Usually these combined sewers get sent to the sewage processing plant, right? We need to take this dirty water, this dirty liquid essentially, and be able to get rid of all the dirty stuff to make it safe that we can put it back into the lake. But the issue is that if there is too big of a storm, it's way too much liquid for the sewer processing plants to actually process. So in those situations, when we get a heavy rainfall, they're not able to deal with this sewage, and they kind of just have to dump it into the lake. And this is why, if you're down by the beaches in Toronto, it will say, if it rained in the last 2 days, we do not recommend you swim in this water, right? Because it might have pollution from these sort of combined sewer systems. The next few slides will show you a few things that we can do for this. Essentially, a partially separated sewer system, they'll take the water that lands on the roads. A lot of Toronto is covered in roads, and it will put it into a stormwater system. So a stormwater system, the difference between that and a sewer system is that you don't technically have to process stormwater. It's just water that lands from the sky. It flows a short distance on the surface, and then it just flows through these pipes down into the lake. But notice that in this partially separated system, the water that lands on the roof, that water is still going to the combined sewer, right? So you still get a lot of combined sewer overflows in this situation. Ideally, we want to go towards this kind of a setup, where it's a fully separated system, right? And then in this situation, the sanitary sewers only has to deal with wastewater from a house or an apartment building. And any water that lands on the road will go into the storm sewer, and any water that lands on the roof will go to the storm sewer. This is the ideal case. And this is why the city of Toronto instituted it's called a mandatory downspout disconnect. So if you own a house and you have a downspout, well, you will have a downspout. If you go back maybe like 25 years, a lot of those downspouts will be directly connected to the sanitary sewer. So that's case 2 here. You can see the downspout connected to the sanitary sewer. And then ever since the downspout disconnect, it's just saying that it's mandatory for you, if you own a house, to disconnect your downspout. There are a few exemptions to this. In some situations, you do want that still connected. We haven't really looked too much into that, but it's a good initiative. And it's still something that is happening in Toronto now, right? The city is still trying to talk people into disconnecting their downspouts. I think something like 87% of the houses do have their downspouts disconnected. Here's a map that I found of Toronto in terms of which areas has a combined sewer system and which areas has a separated system. I think the statistic attached to this map is 23% of Toronto is still using a combined sewer system. The good thing is, because of the mandatory downspout disconnect, a lot of these combined areas do have disconnected downspouts. So all of that roof water isn't going automatically, like it's not going directly into the sanitary sewer, right? A lot of that roof water is able to run along the surface into the storm sewer. Cool. So here's some other things that the city of Toronto is doing to deal with the stormwater. You can see a picture of the stormwater disconnect, right? So that's a connected downspout. It goes right into the ground. And what the city is recommending is you cut that above the ground and then redirect it somewhere else, and then cover up that small opening on the ground. They do have all kinds of different management projects. You can also see a map of Toronto in the middle. So that's the basement flooding subsidy study program, I think. Essentially, they're looking at different sections of the city and trying to investigate, occurrences of basement flooding. One of the benefit of rain gardens is that it's able to mitigate basement flooding. We're a bit hesitant to say that it'll prevent basement flooding because you got to do it right. If you do it wrong, you might end up, causing basement flooding. So the better way of phrasing it will be that it mitigates basement flooding. None of the people that we've helped build rain gardens have said that they're getting more water in the basement. So we think generally, if you're following the proper design specifications, then it will reduce the chance of basement flooding. There's also a few other things like the city of Toronto does make recommendations, right? Build a natural garden, landscape to allow infiltration, disconnect your downspouts, don't wash your car in the driveway with all of the cleaning chemicals, right? Ideally take it to a car wash. They also, I think 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, started this Pollinate Teal community grant. So this is pretty exciting. If you're able to get 3 homeowners who are neighbors committing to build a pollinator habitat, you're able to apply to this grant and get, I think, $5,000 to help you build these things. I think if you're like a church or a school or a company office, you can do it yourself. But if you're a homeowner, you need to find 2 other neighbors to apply to this. Right, and here are some things that other people are doing. So let's see, a couple of these are essentially just projects that other cities have. The city of Peterborough has a rain garden subsidy. I think they subsidize it by about $500, maybe $1,000. The city of Guelph has a rain garden rebate program. And there's one more that I don't think I put here. I mean, there's definitely more than just this, right? Port Hope also has a $500 rain garden subsidy. This is really one of our long-term goals in the city of Toronto, to be able to convince the city of Toronto to provide something like this to people interested in building rain gardens. Luckily, Pollinator TO, the grant that I talked on the previous slide, it does allow for rain gardens as well, right? Rain gardens are considered pollinator habitats. Rain Garden Masterclass is something that's provided by a couple of different groups. We're interested in putting together something like this, and so it's providing a service as well. I think there's one coming up mid-October that's put together by some other group somewhere. If you follow us on social media, you should have seen it. if anyone's interested, I can definitely try and pull that up and just send it to you. Right. One of the other really exciting thing with rain gardens is this is a rain garden that I just saw walking down the neighborhood. Like I had nothing to do with this, right? Rain Gardens United had nothing to do with this. But if you go up to it and sort of look around at what this channel roof rock is doing, it is taking that downspout in the middle and sort of bringing that water further forward. The benefit between this and just a lawn, usually a lawn is able to slow down the runoff by a bit, and it's able to absorb some amount, but something like this will be able to absorb a lot more of that rainwater. Cool. So one of the benefits of rain gardens is that it's a pollinator habitat, right? So the next few slides is really just talking about pollinators. Essentially, the city of Toronto, what most people know about is the European honeybee, and they're amazing, and they do all kinds of work for us in terms of pollination and making honey. But the city of Toronto is home to about 300 more and about 100 more species of bees and butterflies. And most of these are local insects, right? Insects from Southern Ontario that have lived here for a very long time. Oh, and the City of Toronto does have a pollinator protection strategy. I recommend downloading this PDF on the City of Toronto website. It will talk about this pollinator protection strategy. They have a list of recommendations. And I think I've actually seen some stuff on the Toronto Master Gardeners website. So I think you're all very up to date on this. Native pollinators exist naturally within the environment and have co-evolved with native flowering plants for over 100 million years. So this is just something taken directly from that pollinator protection strategy. Here's another news article that I found, which I remember hearing about, and I just looked it up, and there was one published fairly recently. Essentially, it's saying that urban beekeeping can be bad for wild bees. And the argument here is that because in the city there isn't as much nutrients for pollinators, if you have a big honeybee colony, that might end up exhausting the flowers that are in the area, right? Leaving not as much for native bees. I don't know if there's a very good solution for this. I mean, essentially, it's just saying if you're living downtown, you want to make sure you have a lot of native plants. Right, a lot of perennial native wildflowers that you can access before you should try and get a hive. I do think beekeeping is still a very good hobby. Essentially, it just makes you more connected to this circle of life and how things all fit together. Okay, so another benefit from these native plants is that for a few of the species that are local, these plants are actually necessary. If these plants did not exist, then we would not be able to get certain pollinators. A very good example is an image in the top right. Anybody, I mean, I think a lot of you probably recognize this. This is the Monarch butterfly caterpillar. And the Monarch butterfly caterpillar has to eat common milkweed. I think it sometimes confuses other plants for the common milkweed, and then the monarch lays eggs on it. But once the eggs hatch, the caterpillars they don't know what to do with those leaves. They're not able to eat it, or they eat it and it just doesn't taste very good. Right, there are a couple of lists for these larval host plants. We try and stick a couple of them into our rain gardens. Some of the other things. One of the things that we tell people who have rain gardens that we've helped build is try and not trim down for the winter, right? Usually in a couple of months, I'd say, late October, a lot of those perennial wildflowers have gone dormant. But what's happening is that the hollow stem of the plants or the pithy stem of the plants are still useful as habitats for a lot of pollinators. So the longer you can leave those stems there, the better it is, right? Because really, I think the worst case scenario would be that a native bee did find a good habitat and then it just gets cut down at some point, maybe in like November or something. one of the things that are recommended for pollinator gardens is also bare patches of dirt to allow for ground nesting bees. A number of those 300 local bees do nest in the ground. I remember going to a lecture and asking, like, what about rain gardens? Typically we cover them in mulch. Is that an issue? But then the professor was saying, because it's a rain garden and it gets filled with water pretty regularly, these are actually not very good sites for ground nesting bees, right? They would create a nest and then the water would inundate it and they're not really able to stay there. So it's all right that we don't have any bare patches of dirt. But if you just have a pollinator garden, it is useful to have some bare patches of dirt in that garden. Cool. So this is Rochelle's garden. It's also in the East End. Once again, you can see those river rocks, right, as a feature in the garden. We like putting them in there so that it's visually identifiable that it is a rain garden. Yeah, I think if you look on the other side, you'll see how the downspout is being fed into it a lot better. Also in this garden, we put in the tree at the same time as the rest of the garden. Usually it's actually not recommended to build a rain garden underneath the drip line of a tree. So we'll get into that in the next few slides. I feel like this picture would have been year 5 as well. So it's a very advanced rain garden. Cool. So in terms of picking plants for a rain garden, since we're talking about pollinator plants, the plants that you pick ideally are native and they should tolerate both wet and dry conditions. So this is because native plants usually have that very deep root, and even if it doesn't rain for a week or 2, they should still be able to survive. They'll still look just fine, right? The leaves might sag a little bit, but they'll be able to survive. The list that I've put on the right side is also from the Greenie or Brown's Guide, this one over here. Right. And they also have a link in there that gives you a more complete list. There's more options as well than just this. But yeah, if you look through this, I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff you recognize. Mark's garden has a lot of spotted Joe Pye weed, and that's the one that grows like, I think about like 7 to 8 feet tall in the back of the garden. Cool. And here are some more plants that we commonly use. I don't know if I can name all of these off the top of my head. I did put them into the notes, but I'm sure a lot of you are able to recognize these. Some of my favorites are the red one in the middle and the blue one right next to it. So that's the cardinal flower and the great blue lobelia, I believe. And they're actually in the same family. The yellow one just next to that is the sneezeweed. And I like that plant just because it has a bit of a quirky name. And also the story behind the quirky name is that the indigenous people here used to dry this weed and sort of snort it, right? Put it up their nose to make themselves sneeze. And that was a way to sort of clear up your sinus and cure certain things. I find that a lot of these plants they do have medicinal properties as well, right? They have multiple uses aside from just looking very pretty. Oh, and feeding pollinators. Okay, so this is a very simplified slide of some rain gardens. We're gonna go into a bit more detail about each of these, but essentially you have this bowl shape that's able to hold on to some water. It's filled with native plants. And you have that inlet, right? There's some source of water where the rainwater is able to get into this rain garden. So that's the downspout on the left side of this page, of this image. And also with a rain garden, it's essentially impossible to make a rain garden so large that it can like hold the water from every single storm. And really the issue is if you were to make a really big rain garden, it just wouldn't get enough water to keep all of the plants alive. So that's why you're sizing this rain garden according to how big of a roof you have. Now, that also means that if you get a very heavy rainfall, the rain garden is not going to be able to hold on to all of it. So there must be an overflow. So you can see an example of that overflow on the right side of the image. right? And I think on the next slide, I'm going to go into a bit more detail about these. Oh yeah, so this is another rain garden that we built in the first year. I think once again, this is like 5 years old rain garden. The trees grown a lot more, and some of the plants have not survived, and other plants have really just thrived. You can see the colony of sneezeweed in the middle. And once again, the little puddle of river rocks to hold on to the water. What we do in our rain garden is actually make that river rock go a lot deeper. So it's not just a surface feature, it's an underground feature as well. There's like essentially a cube of pea gravel wrapped in landscaping fabric to hold on to more rainwater. And it's called the soakaway pit. It's also something in the Green Eagle Grounds Guide. Right, so now we're gonna get into the details about designing a rain garden. So to pick a good place for a rain garden, you want to make sure that the ground does slope away from the house. And this is just because the rain garden is going to overflow eventually, right? Usually in the typical year, there will probably be like 1 or 2 storms. It's hard to be certain about those numbers. There's going to be some storms that will overflow your rain garden. And when your rain garden overflows, you don't want that water to come back to your house. You want that water to flow away from the house. If it's greater than the 5% grade, there is a chance that the water will just end up, sort of essentially erosion, right? It's not going to follow the outline that you built for it. It's just sort of going to wash away the garden and spread it out. It's not too big of an issue. You can probably just rebuild it and create a bit of a berm to hold on to the water. But ideally, between 1% and 5% is great. You want this to be about 3 meters or 10 foot away from the foundations of a house. Some of the images you've seen, they're a little bit close. And typically it's because the foundations do not extend to the edge of the veranda, right? Underneath that is just regular soil. So we do count that as part of the 3 meters. You want to avoid the drip line of a tree. That's more just because it's harder to dig. I've definitely seen rain gardens built under the drip line of a tree. And we have built at least 1 or 2 rain gardens that are in the drip line of a tree. If you're happy working around the roots, then it's fine to go for it. But as a general advice, you should put it away from a tree. And it also has to have a source of rainwater. So for most of the rain gardens we've built, it's just a roof, right? Usually it does take some from the driveway as well. We love to build rain gardens next to parking lots, but we haven't made that connection with commercial properties to build parking lot rain gardens. There are a few that the city has built though, and there's one in the East End that I can definitely point you guys at. Another important thing is to avoid underground utilities. When we were building Mark's rain garden, we called these guys Ontario One Call, and it's a free service. They'll send a technician over and just sort of see what's underground. Essentially, it's going to be things like Bell or Rogers, a gas main, a water service line, right? So these kind of different features that happen underground, you want to make sure you're well away from it. I'd say give it like at least a foot's clearance, right? Don't dig too close to it. With Mark's rain garden, we called these guys. They drew the line. They spray painted where the gas main is, and then as we were digging, I think they just missed like an elbow or something. So we actually did hit the gas line, but we were digging by hand using shovels. So we didn't end up damaging it in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, if you're digging, then definitely call these people. But once again, you're a master gardener, so you definitely know that as well. In terms of sizing the rain garden, you want to calculate essentially 2 things, right? How big is the area that you're draining into this rain garden? And then just how big the garden is. For the drainage area, you can more or less estimate it. It's not too important that you get exact numbers. Yeah, but it's pretty fun as well. So if you have kids, you can definitely get them, just send them outside with measuring tape and just ask them to measure the size of the roof. The garden area is 1/10 that. All right, so if you have the area of your roof divided by 10, and you can size your garden for it. This isn't strict. you can do like 1/5 of your drainage area or even 1/20th of your drainage area. It's just going to affect how efficient it is. And there's things you can do to make it, hold on to that rainwater a bit better.
Mr. Wang? Mr.
Yes.
Wang, I'm sorry. There was 10 minutes left. Just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, sorry, pardon the interruption while we try to figure out, okay, we are readmitting Mr. Wang right now, so interruptions should be very short-lived. Let's see. Mr. Wang, can you hear me? Are you back in the meeting? Okay, I believe he is having some issues. I'm not seeing him in the participant list.
He's listed there about.
Wait, oh.
Yeah, but his video's not enabled right now. I think he might have technical difficulties.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I guess we'll just talk a bit or something while we give him a minute to get his bandwidth fired up again.
If it's like my internet, somehow the server reboots at the same time every day, and I disconnect from the internet at that time.
Oh, really?
maybe his internet service provider. Oh, I think he's trying to call in now.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Let's see.
Hello?
Oh, hello,
Hi,
Ms.
Will.
Wong. Oh, okay, fantastic.
Hi, yes. Sorry, my laptop disconnected. It's one of the bugs it has. But I did log in through my desktop and my phone, so I can try and finish up the presentations for this.
Sure.
Okay.
That would be great.
Let me see if I can just resume from this page. Actually, I'm guessing I'm not sharing my slides right now, right?
No, we'll need you to share your screen again.
Sorry about this.
Oh, it happens a lot in some ways.
Switch to audio, record. Actually, I don't see a way of sharing. Oh, no, there it is. There it is.
Yay, all right.
All right. Sorry for the interruption. Okay, so designing a rain garden. Let's see. Yeah, I feel like a lot of these we don't really have to worry too much about it. If a yard is too clay heavy, you do want to amend the soil before you build a rain garden, right? Essentially, the worst case scenario is you build a rain garden, it rains and it fills up with water, then it just doesn't drain. So if that is the situation, you want to make sure that the place you're building is able to drain. Right. So this is actually an example of that scenario I just talked about. So Seattle built about 90 rain gardens. This was built by the city, the Seattle Public Utilities. And about a dozen of these rain gardens were not draining properly. So they just left this pond of water. So this is a bad situation because mosquitoes can breed in that water, for example. A well-designed rain garden, it should drain within a couple of hours, maybe a day, right? One thing that is recommended by the guide that I had earlier, the Greening of Grounds guide, is to do an infiltration test, just to make sure that the water is able to drain from this. Okay, so let's talk a bit about actually digging it out. You want to make sure you have the area for the rain garden sized out, and then you're digging almost 3 feet, right? It's almost a meter down. But when you're filling the soil mix back up, you're only filling up the 2 feet. So you're leaving some room above the soil for plants, mulch, and water pooling. We actually didn't really bother doing this for a lot of our rain gardens. We felt like it worked better if we filled it up to the top. Right, and the soil mix is 3 parts sand and 2 parts compost. If the site that you're building on does have really sandy soil and really good drainage, then you can totally just use that existing soil. And in fact, we've had people message us and say, we built a rain garden, can you come and check it out? Where they didn't even do this, right? They didn't really mix it with any compost. They just used the existing soil because it does drain really well. But they did dig that bowl shape. All right, so here's an example of rain garden partway through the dig. We started this very late last year, and we finished up earlier this year. You can see in the middle, there's that landscaping fabric. That's a cube of gravel, and it's an extra stormwater reservoir underground, and it just, it encourages more infiltration and more water storage. But you can see a rough example of the depth there. In terms of the inlet and overflow, usually we just do something very basic and extend the downspout using those accordion hose and just bring it to the middle of the rain garden. If the slope works, you don't really have to even do that, right? You can do like a splash pad at the base of the downspout and just have that pointing towards the rain garden. And if you have like a channel of river rock, you can probably bring that into the rain garden pretty effectively. The river rock definitely helps a lot just to slow down that water, right? As it's coming down the downspout and through those pipes, it can move quickly and end up causing a lot of erosion. So having like a little pool of river rock or pea gravel that can help slow it down and just make the rain garden last longer. Here's 2 more examples of inlets. You can see Mark's rain garden. I think this was in year 2. The downspouts extended using that accordion, the green accordion hose on the left side, into a pool of river rock. And then the picture on the right is Steve's garden with the 2 houses, right, both feeding this rain garden. So they've just put the 2 extended downspouts right next to each other, feeding into this pool of river rock. Once again, this picture is actually a rain garden that we didn't build. But it shows a nice example of an outlet. So they figured that that corner of the garden is the lowest corner. So when there's too much rainwater, the water will be exiting the garden at that corner. So because they know that, they filled it with some pea gravel just so that it doesn't also take away a bunch of mulch and take away a bunch of soil with it. All right, and here's another picture of Mark's rain garden. And you can see in this one, he put a bunch more of the river rock on the side, right? So that's actually, it's not on the opposite end of the inlet. The inlet is right there, but there is a bit of a berm that separates the inlet and the outlet. So it's able to manage, like it's able to capture a lot of that rainwater, but when it overflows, it just goes along that rock channel. Cool. There's some small details with plants. Essentially, you want 10 plants per square meter or about a plant per square foot. You want to space them correctly so they're not too clustered together. It's recommended that you water every few days during the first month just to help them get established. But usually past that, you don't really need to water this at all, right? If you get like a whole month of no rain, you might want to add some water in there, but otherwise the rainwater will take care of it. We also put a fairly thick layer of mulch, 2 to 4 inches. That's recommended by the Greening Your Grounds Guide. And that essentially just holds on to the moisture and it prevents other weeds like maple keys from getting in there. All right, there's a zoomed in version of the planting for Mark's rain garden. I don't think there's anything I really want to point out over here. Where that gravel channel ends is where we put the soakaway pit, right? It's further down. Essentially, you dig to the bottom of the rain garden, then you dig another 2 feet to make that gravel pit. It can be combined with rain barrels and soakaway pits. One thing that works really well if you have a vegetable garden is use the rain barrel water for the vegetable garden, and then any excess water from the rain barrel will feed the rain garden. Cool. So here's an example of a rain garden combined with a rain barrel, and then the soakaway pit before I wrapped it up underneath the rain garden. There's very little maintenance to the rain gardens as well. Essentially, you want to try and mulch it every year and remove anything that sort of are volunteering in it, right? If you see maple keys that have landed and sprouted, or if you see invasive plants. One thing that's very easy is for dock strangling vine to spread into it because they're spread so easily and you know, they're very hardy. So if you see those kind of things, you do want to pull it out from the rain garden. We find that's another issue. A lot of the draw for rain gardens is that it's low maintenance. So because of that, a lot of owners don't like to spend too much time in the garden. So we try and send out newsletters to remind them, spend some time with your garden, take a look around, see if there's any invasive species. We're also starting to offer maintenance activities, right? We can do some of this for a small fee. Cool. Here's another rain garden. This one's a little bit wilted. It's not getting as much water, but you can see that it's behind a retaining wall. And this is a picture of, I think this is 2 of our, well, it's one of our initial rain gardens from 2015, from 5 years ago. This garden is a lot more overgrown by now. I think the next picture is that. Yeah, so that's the same garden from the previous slide. It's got a lot more plants. And the same garden from another angle again. Cool. And here are some more resources and training if you are interested. One thing I do want to recommend is the Greening Your Grounds workshop and seminar. There is one that's coming up in October. The Rain Garden Masterclass is also excellent. Mark and I took one that's offered somewhere in the States, but they put everything online, and essentially it's just watch these 5 videos, build a rain garden, reach out to us, and we'll give you certification. We'll say you're a certified master rain gardener. Some of you probably have heard of Fusion Landscaping. It's certification provided by Landscape Ontario. We've considered getting our contractor friends to take the certification, but it's a couple $100 and they decided it wasn't worth it for them. And we're not exactly landscape professionals, so I'm not sure if we're actually even allowed to take that. There's also another international green infrastructure certification program. So if you're dealing with a city and offering to build rain gardens, they would want some sort of certification like this. And I think we're going to the last slide. There. This is the event I was talking about. We recently heard back from the city to get the park permit. We're going to be doing this down in the Beaches Park. It's near that swimming pool just around Woodbine and Lakeshore, and it'll be on October 3rd. And we're going to have activities and performances. So hopefully that'll turn out very well. And I think that's it for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wang. I think Leslie should be up next, just to say a few words.
Sure.
If I can, I was wondering if you can, okay, I'm just gonna stop your sharing if you don't, and
yep.
Leslie, has she been unmuted? Let me just double check that. Leslie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, let me try to give you your
Yeah,
video.
here I am. Okay. So, Ting, I just want to thank you so much. It was a very comprehensive presentation and an inspiring one at that. And all the way through, I kept thinking, how can I do this